Hello, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to the webinar on assessing the comprehensiveness and inclusiveness of social protection systems. This webinar is hosted by the Asian Development Bank. My name is Babken Babajanyan, and I'm a social protection specialist at ADB based in Manila. Before I tell you a little bit more about today's webinar, I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Shamit Chakravarti. Shamit is a director at Human and Social Development Department here at ADB, and he is responsible for social protection and for the Pacific region. So Shamit would like to say a few words to welcome all of you to this webinar. Over to you, Shamit.
Uh, Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you to all of you who have joined this very important webinar. At the outset, let me please apologize. I was out of Manila for about 15 days and I've just returned home to find that there's a pneumatic drill trying to drill the road right in front of my house. So apologies if you hear this sound. This webinar is really timely because all of you, the practitioners, the researchers, the policymakers, you will agree that social protection systems are increasingly expected to respond to a wide range of vulnerabilities today, cutting across different stages of our life, across different dimensions like gender, age, disability, climate risk. So first and foremost, as policymakers, as practitioners, we need to understand whether our systems are comprehensive and inclusive. We also need to understand whether these systems are financially sustainable. So this webinar series is a very important opportunity for all of us to come together as researchers, policymakers, and practitioners to think about these key methodological issues regarding the comprehensiveness and inclusiveness of social protection systems. So in today's webinar, as you're all aware from the agenda, we will be introducing ADB's flagship assessment framework, what we call social protection indicators of coverage and effectiveness, or SPICEs. And it builds on our earlier SPI methodology. I am very confident that this session will spark meaningful dialogue and peer learning, and it'll help strengthen all our collective efforts to build better social protection systems across the region. Thank you very much. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Shamit, for your welcome words. And let me just tell you a little bit about this webinar. So as Shamit alluded, this webinar is part of a broader webinar series hosted by ADB on rethinking social protection, inclusive, adaptive, and future-ready systems. So throughout a number of webinars, we will be exploring a range of topics in social protection, covering adaptive social protection, resilience building, digital social protection, social care and support, and so on. So I'm inviting you to keep your eye on this space and just follow the announcement at socialprotection.org for future webinars. Another thing I wanted to tell you about is the Asia Pacific community that is hosted by the socialprotection.org platform. And you can register at this platform to become a member of this community. And as a member, you will have access to a number of benefits, and these are free. So you can be able to actually influence the content of future webinars. You will be able to engage in discussions and possibly collaborations with other members of the community and interact around key developmental topics. You will also be able to contribute to special blogs that will be published on this community. So I encourage everyone to sign up for this community if you haven't already. So let me also tell you a little bit about the sort of main housekeeping rules for today's webinar. Next slide, please. So please be aware that this session is being recorded, and along with the presentation, this recording will be available on socialprotection.org, and it will be sent to all participants who have registered for this webinar. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself and make comments or share useful links if you wish to. But if you have any questions for the presenters, for the panelists, please use the Q&A box. So this would enable us to pick up your questions and to direct them to the presenters. When you write your questions, please introduce yourselves, your organization, and tell us which specific presenter, panelist member you would like to address your question to. That would help us to direct your questions to specific individuals concerned. And also, the automated system at Zoom generates automatic captions. And to see it, click the CC closed captions button, and that way you would be able to view the captions on Zoom. So with those key essentials, I would proceed now to introducing the structure of today's session. So there will be a keynote presentation of 20 minutes, and here we will hear all about the ADB's flagship SPICES approach. And as Shamit said, SPICES approach has come to replace the flagship SPI framework, which has been designed to assess effectiveness of social protection systems. And my colleague Ludovico, who will be presenting this, will tell you all about how we've designed this framework and how it captures comprehensiveness and inclusiveness of social protection. So this presentation will be then followed by a panel discussion of 30 minutes and questions and answers from the audience. And let me introduce the panel members and the presenters today. So the main presenter, Ludovico Carraro, is a social protection expert. He's the team leader of the SPICES exercise, and he is working closely with the ADB team in developing the methodology and the assessments for the countries concerned. Our panel moderator is Coco Okada. She's a social affairs officer at the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, UNESCOP. And the panel members, so we have 3 panel members, and today we have, the next slide, please. Today, our discussants will be Dr. Nurma Midayanti. She's a director of social resilience statistics at BPS Statistics Indonesia. We have Arpine Melkumian, Chief Information Security Officer at NORC Technology Center in Armenia. And Jimmy Francis T. Shuk II, Director of the 4th Division, Social Registry Office, DSWD, that's the Department of Social Welfare and Development in the Philippines. So with that, I am handing it over to Ludovico to present the SPICES approach, which, as I said, would be followed by a panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Let me share my screen. I think everybody is able to see now. Well, I think I want to start by saying that ADB has a 20 years history in the production and analysis of social protection statistics in Asia and the Pacific. So the first development of the methodology for the social protection indicator started in 2004, 2005. And then there were a range of regional reports that provided a consistent assessment across countries in Asia and the Pacific of what was called the social protection index, that then became the social protection indicator, and the production of several reports in 2009, 2012, 2015, and 2018. And the emphasis was to develop this social protection indicator that captured the level of social protection expenditure in relation to the intended beneficiaries in each country. And the emphasis was very much on regional reports. Now, since 2 years ago, there has been a rethink about the methodology and the role of this analysis in Asia and the Pacific, and the development of a new approach that we call the social protection indicators of coverage and effectiveness. So the spices that aim to give a flavor of what is the social protection system in the country. And in a nutshell, the new approach developed an enhanced analytical framework with a focus on assessing the comprehensiveness of social protection across needs and inclusion, and an emphasis on country rather than regional reports. And in the making is also a development of a social protection programs database across the region that we aim to make available to all practitioners and the research community. So let's try to understand what we mean by the analytical framework that is behind the spices. And essentially, it is very simple. Is structure the social protection indicators into the process of social protection. So from understanding what are the inputs, so the social protection expenditure and its structures based on social insurance, social assistance, and labor market programs, health expenditure, and then how this inputs results into outputs. So population coverage, what is the average benefit, what is the social protection indicator, so the average expenditure per social protection need as a percentage of GDP per capita, but also the comprehensiveness of social protection efforts across needs. And finally, how those outputs result in outcome. So in understanding what is the impact of social protection on reducing poverty and inequality, and also in terms of increased participation and social inclusion of disadvantaged groups. And while inputs and outputs rely very much on coverage, gathering of data from administrative sources, the outcomes are measured through household survey analysis, and whenever those are available. So let's also understand a bit more about the social protection outputs. So there are two basic dimensions that are often recognized, the number of beneficiaries, which can be expressed as a coverage of population, and the level of support, so the average benefits. And when these two are multiplied, of course, we obtain the overall social protection expenditure. But what is the emphasis of the new approach is to understand that there is a third dimension. So we want to move from a flat understanding to add a depth, to understand that social protection has different functions. So when we look at this different function, we can look at what is the coverage and the average benefit in the first function, the second function, the third function, and so on. And in this way, assess not only the overall social protection expenditure, but how social protection expenditure addresses different needs and what is the balance in which this is done. And finally, also the way in which the functions are defined can look at another important dimension, which is the different inclusions of disadvantaged groups, or a specific focus, for example, on gender and disability. And how do we define these functions? How do we define the needs for social protection? Well, typical risks that are recognized are those that we face throughout the life cycle. So the needs that are particularly present during childhood in relation to maternity and old age. And if we analyze poverty across the different phases of age of a person, what we often find is that poverty is more likely to be seen when a young age of a child. Then people tend to move out of poverty when they are young adults. But again, when a couple has many children, is more likely to see a situation of people falling into poverty, which again they escape before retirement, to then again face a situation more likely of poverty when people are in older age and not longer in the labor force. And this is essentially one of the results of the analysis of poverty that was done by Rowntree in end of 1800, beginning of 1900 in the city of York. So the first quantitative assessment of poverty exactly matched this situation, in a situation where social protection didn't exist, and something that we also find nowadays in developing countries that have nascent or very small social protection interventions. But beyond the life cycle, there are also shocks that can occur throughout. So health shocks, disability, unemployment, that are risks that are recognized should be addressed by social protection. And similarly, throughout the life cycle, it could be that there are specific economic shocks, climate-related or pandemic, as we witnessed a few years ago, that can affect people for which social protection can be a response. So in the SPICES methodology, we recognize six main areas of need: old age, children and family, unemployment, disability, poverty and vulnerability, and health. And for each of these needs, we identify what should be the intended beneficiaries. And in analyzing a social protection system in a country, we categorize all the social protection program as addressing one of these needs. So for example, pensions being either provided through a social insurance or social pensions clearly address the need that arise in old age. And the intended beneficiary would be the population age 60 and above, or any other threshold that is specifically defined in a country. It could be 65 and more. And similarly for children and so on. What I want to highlight here is that the need for poverty and vulnerability is social assistance that is not classified in the previous categories. So whenever we have a program that doesn't specifically target a certain group of a certain age individuals, we have a program that, for example, target poor households where we could find both elderly and children. We have a program that addresses the poverty and vulnerability in the country. And after classifying each social protection program based on these needs, we can see how much is spent for those programs and how many people are covered, are the beneficiaries of those programs. And that is how then the SPI is computed. We don't simply look at expenditure, but expenditure in relation to the needs. And these needs are affected by and different in each country, depending on their demographic profile, in terms of the level of unemployment that exists in the country, and the level of the incidence of disability and so on. But what we also do is to try to understand how these different needs are covered, so that if we consider what is the benchmark of coverage and level of support that should be provided across the different areas, we can put this different dimension in a spider graph and assess to what extent social protection expenditure is balanced towards these different needs. And in this made-up example, we can see that there is a good coverage, a very good coverage for old age and also for health risks, but not much so for the needs of children and families. And in the SPICES framework, there is also an emphasis in understanding to what extent social protection is focusing on certain poor and socially excluded groups, and to what extent there is an effort in reducing the existing inequality and an effort to include these people in society. And this is obtained simply looking at what is the ratio of expenditure, of social protection expenditure that is provided to these groups compared to what is the ratio of the population of such subpopulation in the country. So, for example, if 30% of social protection expenditure is received by the poor across all social protection programs, and there are 20% of the population that is poor, what we will obtain is a ratio that is above 1, indicating that there is a focus towards including the poor in society and reducing inequality. Okay, so this is the overall framework. I just want to provide quickly some examples on the type of indicators that have been generated by a recent analysis that has been conducted in Pakistan, Indonesia, Mongolia, and Georgia. So here we see the overall social protection as a percentage of GDP. With a large variation. So from Indonesia, 1.5% of GDP to Mongolia, that's almost 10%. But also that the composition of this social protection expenditure is very different. Both in Indonesia and Georgia, social assistance dominates the overall social protection expenditure, whereas in Pakistan and Mongolia, it is social insurance. And in all countries, the overall expenditure for active labor market policy is relatively minor. What we obtain then is the social protection indicator, which shows what is the average social protection expenditure per social protection need as a percentage of GDP per capita. And again, this reflects the overall input, of course, but there are some differences. For example, while Indonesia had a relatively smaller social protection expenditure than Pakistan, as a social protection indicator, they actually look the same. More interestingly, though, when we look at comprehensiveness, we find that the same social protection expenditure and even the same social protection indicator, when it is disaggregated across needs, can reveal very different situations. So in Indonesia, there is a clear focus on poverty and vulnerability, but very little protection for old age in general, for children, for disability. And a different scenario is emerging from the analysis of Pakistan, where there is a relatively good protection for old age. And again, this analysis can be shown for Georgia and Mongolia. In terms of inclusion, the focus on inclusion based on those ratios that I was mentioning before, we have an example from the analysis that was done in Georgia, where the overall ratio is relatively neutral in terms of support to the poor for the overall social protection expenditure, whereas there is a relative focus on women and girls, and particularly on disability. And finally, as an outcome, what we see is a simulated poverty reduction that is achieved through social protection. So this again reflects clearly the overall composition and level of social protection expenditure. But while in Georgia and Mongolia, the effect is reducing poverty drastically by 56 and 62%. In Indonesia and Pakistan, that percentage is much lower. And this simulated impact can also be disaggregated by relevant groups, population groups. So I can look at what is the impact and relative impact, for example, in Georgia, on the support that is provided to households that have a member with a disability compared to those that have at least one child, or people in pension age, or people households that have a low work intensity. And then assess to what extent is the impact of social protection on poverty. So this is just some examples to have an overall understanding. So what are the conclusion and still the remaining challenges? Well, we can say that the SPICES framework is conceived to really take some positive steps in understanding comprehensiveness and the inclusion of social protection. But it only provides an overview of what are the main features of the social protection system. It cannot give the details of each specific aspect of each programs. And sometimes in analyzing the overall social protection expenditure, there is of course, an emphasis on the headline figures. These are dominated by programs that have large expenditure, and this might ignore some of the positive development and innovations that occur on the margins. Yeah. And also, we should recognize that the results are highly dependent on what is the quality and the availability of disaggregated data, especially when we want to focus on relatively disadvantaged groups. So it is sometimes difficult to obtain information about people with disabilities and how much they actually receive across different social protection programs, or across some ethnic minorities, or even some administrative data are not disaggregated by gender. Also, although the framework puts some emphasis on social protection ability to adapt and respond to shock, here we did face some difficulties in always finding availability of data. And finally, one area that is still not given adequate relevance is also related to social care services and their role in social protection. And with this, I conclude with the overview of the methodology. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ludo, for your excellent presentation. It was really, really insightful and highlighting the importance of capturing and measuring, I think, the different aspects of social protection in terms of coverage, adequacy, and I think very interestingly, the concept of comprehensiveness in terms of responding to different needs and risks. And I'd like to warmly welcome everyone to the next part of this webinar, which will be a panel discussion, where we will hear from 3 speakers, Dr. Norma Midayanti, Ms. Arpine Melkumian, and also Mr. Jimmy, Mr. Jimmy Francis T. Shook II. And I'd like to start this panel by inviting Ms. Ibu Norma, the Director of Social Resilience Statistics, BPS of Indonesia, to respond to the question on how does BPS, through its National Integrated Social and Economy Database, DTSEN, assess whether social protection programs are responsive to the diverse needs of different population groups, particularly in terms of life cycle, gender, age, disability, and other vulnerabilities. The floor is yours, Ibu Norma. Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. May I? Good afternoon, everyone, the distinguished colleagues and participants. Today, I will be speaking on DTSEN and discuss how DTSEN, Indonesia's National Integrated Social and Economic Data, is driving the transformation of our social protection system. And guided by the SPICES framework, this transformation is about strengthening protection across the life cycle, ensuring inclusiveness, resilience, and efficiency for all Indonesians. Sorry. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can, Norma. Yes, it's in presenter mode now. Perfect, thank you.
Let me give the explanation of my presentation. As introduction, as the Ludo mentioned about Indonesia, we can see from the first figure over the past 2 decades, Indonesia has made steady progress in reducing poverty from 17.74% in 2006 to just only 8.47% in 2025. However, the trend shows that the pace of reduction is slowing, meaning that remaining poor are increasingly harder to live out of poverty. In the second figure, we also can see that at the same time, the data reveals that over half of Indonesia's population is still economically insecure. Not only the poor, but also near poor and those just above the poverty line. This large vulnerable group faces a high risk of falling back into poverty when hit by shock, such as job loss, illness, or disasters. These figures highlight that while Indonesia has reduced extreme poverty, the bigger challenge ahead is building resilience and economic security through stronger, better targeted, and more inclusive social protection system. Although in 2025, 8.47% or 23.85 million Indonesians are still below the poverty line, yet the challenge goes deeper. About half of the population remains vulnerable, with consumption level only twice the poverty line, making them highly exposed to shock. These risks follow people throughout their life cycle, from pregnant mothers and children to productive age workers and into old age. On top of that, Indonesia faces emergency risks such as natural disasters driven by climate change and its location, Indonesia in the Pacific Ring of Fire, as well as social risk from its diverse and dynamic society. Combined with the slowdown in reducing inequality, this shows that growth is not equally shared and many remain at risk of falling back into poverty without stronger inclusive social protection. And next, I would like to explain about the current social protection in Indonesia and its relation with SPICE's framework. Currently, Indonesia's social protection framework is evolving from fragmented programs into a more comprehensive, adaptive, and inclusive system. On one side, social assistance provides non-contributory support to the poor and vulnerable, helping them avoid falling back into poverty while promoting investment in health and education. And on the other, social security ensures contributory protection across health and employment for all age groups. This framework is further supported by social care service, which open access to better jobs and livelihoods, and by disaster adaptive protection to safeguard those impacted by natural disasters. Together, these components reflect Indonesia's effort to build a system that protects people at all stages of life while being more responsive to risks and shocks. In this slide, we can see how the comprehensive social protection system to safeguard the welfare of all citizens and invest in human resources. Building on the foundation of social assistance and social security, Indonesia is now moving towards a more comprehensive, adaptive, and inclusive social protection system. The framework used here illustrates how protection is being designed across the entire life cycle, from pregnant women and early childhood to school-age children, working-age adults, and the elderly. At the individual level, there are targeted programs such as Program Keluarga Harapan, is the conditional cash transfers for vulnerable group. Indonesia Pintar to support education, prakerja for skills and employment, and pension for older citizens. These are completed by household-based programs like Sembako for food, LPG and electricity subsidies to secure basic needs. And the last, at the community level, area-based programs such as Dana Desa play a role in strengthening local safety nets. And increasingly, we see adaptive social protection being emphasized, ensuring that the system can respond to shocks, including disasters and economic crises. Together, these frameworks show how Indonesia is developing an integrated social protection system that safeguards welfare, supports human capital, and provides resilience at every stage of life. I think this meet with the program and intended beneficiaries that Ludo mentioned. While Indonesia has progressed in building social protection. Yeah? I'm sorry?
We are running a bit out of time. Would it be possible to wrap up the presentation?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I keep,
Maybe
I think this is the important about the data plan.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Yes, in this slide, I think how BPS role to develop unified data. In short, sorry. BPS play a strategic role as a backbone of DTSN, ensuring the system is built on high quality and reliable data. As explained before, DTSN consolidates three major socioeconomic database, DTKS, Rexosec, and P3KA, and validates them with civil registration data from MOHA and also the sectoral database. DTSN is designed as a unified integrated database that consolidates socioeconomic information from various sources. By having one single reference, ministries and local government can work from the same data foundation, reduction duplication, and ensuring better accuracy in targeting. But DTSN is not only about integration. The real goal is transformation to make Indonesia's social protection system stronger, more inclusive, and more adaptive for future challenges, and also aligning programs with real needs and strengthening protection across the life cycle. This is the last slide. How SPICES implementation in DTSN. As we reach the end, this slide shows how DTSN embodies the SPICES framework in transforming Indonesia social protection. First, in sustainability, second, in coverage, third, adequacy, fourth, effectiveness, and fifth, system integration, and also finally, the adaptability. So in short, DTSN is not just a database, it is a foundation for a more integrated, adaptive, and equitable social protection system that truly strengthens protection across the life cycle. Okay, thank you from me. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ibu Norma. Yes, we are running a little bit behind time. So we were going to have 2 rounds of questions, but I think we will just stick to having 1 round of question for our panelists. But thank you so much, Ibu Norma. It was really an excellent, providing excellent insights, really demonstrating the power of DTSN, the unified single registry database, to demonstrate the impact of having the integrated data and informing socioeconomic analysis on not just tracking beneficiaries, but identifying the underlying causes of vulnerability. I would like to next invite Ms. Arpine Melikumyan from Armenia to respond to the question on how Armenia's social protection information system supports inclusive service delivery, particularly for people with disabilities, and what role does digital infrastructure play in enabling this? Thank you, Ms. Arpine. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Coco. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. First of all, let me say that I'm very pleased and deeply honored to have the opportunity to present experience of Armenia in the social protection sphere at the webinar assessing the comprehensiveness and inclusiveness of social protection systems. I hope that today's discussion will lead to positive outcomes that will help all of us contribute to improving social protection around the world. And returning to the question, I would like to say that Armenia's social protection information system supports inclusive service delivery by maintaining comprehensive and current data on people with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. It captures detailed information on beneficiaries receiving social benefits, functionality assessments, unemployment aid, home care, personal assistance, housing support, and other social services. And social workers coordinate this process to ensure diverse needs are met, with monitoring through home visits and personalized social work programs. Coming to the digital infrastructure, it is very important to say that the digital infrastructure is essential in providing an integrated platform for data collection, management, and coordination. It enables interoperability with national registries and other digital systems, ensuring timely and accurate service delivery. The system improves overall transparency and accountability within social protection programs, facilitating better access and responsiveness for vulnerable populations. And this digital backbone helps target services effectively, accounting for individual needs and enhancing the quality and inclusivity of social protection in Armenia. And that is all for this question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arpine. I'd like to move on to to Jimmy for the next question on what were some of the major lessons learned in implementing the social registry in the Philippines, Lista Hanan, in targeting the vulnerable populations, including life cycle shocks and emergencies.
Thank you, and thank you, Coco, and thank you, ADB, again for inviting us to join this webinar. You know, in the Philippines, I think a decade ago, I think before 2010, the very fundamental problem of the Philippines in implementing social protection is really the fragmentation of different social protection databases. So you have one ministry maintaining their own database and another ministry maintaining as well their own database. And with that kind of setup, what can you expect? You can expect poor coordination among programs. You can expect higher inclusion and exclusion errors. You can expect non-inclusion, for example, of vulnerable groups. And you can also expect limited impacts on, say, for example, poverty alleviation and a lot more issues. But in 2010, the Philippines has decided to come up and institutionalize a standardized targeting system that will once and for all identify who and where the poor are, and number two, serve as reference for all ministries and poverty alleviation programs and social protection programs to use it in targeting their beneficiaries. And since 2010, the Philippines has already implemented around 3 rounds of household assessment nationwide, covering about 50 to 60% of the households in the Philippines. And over time, since it has been institutionalized, more than 25 national government programs already of the Philippines has been utilizing that in identifying their beneficiaries. So it has addressed the fundamental problems that the Philippines has been experiencing in the past. It has coordinated the delivery of social protection for the last, I guess, for the last 10 years. But moving forward, while we were trying to address the fragmentation of social protection targeting and social protection planning in the Philippines, we realized that this kind of setup is already brewing some kind of new issues along the way. Like, for example, because it is static, like once the enumeration is already conducted, it gets updated only the next 3 or 5 years. The fundamental flaw of having a static social protection targeting, for example, is you miss out the new poor that exists in between assessment years. And in the Philippines, it was designed that way, meaning if you were not part of the previous household assessment, and then here comes a year after, you have, for example, experienced life cycle shocks like um, you lost job, or you were affected, you were displaced because of a of an emergency, for example, but you're not in the list. There's really no way for you to be prioritized or to be part of social protection programs that really covers that uses the listahanan as their source of poor. And then also, because of the static design, there's really, even if you're in the listahanan database, there's really no way for you to update your, for example, your demographic information. Like previously, you were not pregnant, but now moving forward, because, for example, you got married with another household, and then the new information does not really are not really captured. The vulnerability are also not reported then updated, and there's really many human capital development opportunities that are being missed because of the static design of listahanan. And also it there's the for example, even for the communities, not only at the individual level, even for communities, like if there is a um, widespread displacement of households, why due to, for example, bad weather or extreme weather conditions, there's really no way of coming up with a community level targeting, and that adds up to the complications of having a static social protection targeting system in the Philippines. And also very timely now for the Philippines. There's now the Philippine Statistics Authority is now the one heading the conduct of household assessment, and even the design of the proxy means test. It's already being done together with our economic ministry, and so that the Ministry of Social Welfare and Development could really just focus on implementing, monitoring, evaluating social protection programs. And that is where we are headed now. We're veering away from a static social registry to a more dynamic social registry that will once and for all, number one, address all the experiences that we have having a static registry. So we're centralizing all our database now. In DSWD, we have around more than 25 social protection programs within the ministry alone. We're centralizing once and for all of it. We make sure that it's authenticated also with our national ID system. And we make sure that, there's better delivery of social protection services, because, like, for example, when there's a calamity, or when there's bad weather or extreme weather condition, instead of just, providing relief in those areas by, for example, deploying food and non-food items, you also take into consideration, for example, the demographic information about this area. You also take into consideration the vulnerabilities, for example, in this area, because if in those area, for example, there are about, you have this disability number of population that are that are considered persons with disabilities, or, for example, pregnant, or, for example, old age persons. you don't just randomly go to and deploy, for example, relief assistance, but you make sure that because of having a social centralized registry, you are able to deploy better interventions that are strategic, for example, in that particular area. Like, for example, those that will really, benefit, for example, the old age, if there are the pregnant women and the persons with disability. So we're doing it now, and that is how the Philippine Social Registry will really transition into now and in the next few years. That's all.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was thank you for sharing your insights on Listahanan and really highlighting some of the key challenges facing social registries in capturing the dynamic nature of poverty. It was great to hear the work that you're doing in the Philippines towards integrating data sources. It seems we have a few more minutes to continue the panel discussion. So I'd like to ask our panelists one more round of questions, but just requesting if you could keep it short to about 4 minutes, your answers, so that we can allow for the question and answer session after this panel. So Dr. Ibu Norma, if I could ask you the second question, but requesting if you could kindly keep your intervention to about 4 minutes. The question is, how is DT-SEN being used to measure the shock responsiveness of social protection systems in Indonesia, especially in identifying and supporting households affected by sudden economic, health, or environmental disruptions? Thank you, Ibu Norma.
Yeah, thank you, Coco. Like I said before, or I explained in my presentation, with DT-SEN, BPS, to the National Integrated Social and Economic Data, plays a central role in ensuring that social protection programs are inclusive and truly responsive to the needs of Indonesia's diverse population, because cover the life cycle perspective by mapping these life cycle stages. DT-SEN ensure that social protection programs are not one size fits all, but also instead address in evolving needs over time. Second, also cover the gender and age dimension. It also it will help policymakers ensure that assistance does not unintentionally reinforce inequalities, but instead promotes fairness and inclusion. And also covers the disability and vulnerability that I explained before. With DT-SEN, these needs are visible and measurable, so programs can be adjusted accordingly. And also the last DT-SEN coverage, integration, and responsiveness is meet the need because DT-SEN is synchronized with the national ID system. This ensures that every household and individual is included, reducing duplication and also minimizing exclusion errors and inclusion error. In short, through DT-SEN, BPS Statistics Indonesia ensures that social protection programs are grounded in solid evidence. By capturing this aggregated, comprehensive, and up-to-date data, DT-SEN makes it possible to monitor whether assistance is truly responsive across life cycle stages, gender, age, disability, and other vulnerabilities. This strengthens not only inclusivity, but also I think the effectiveness and fairness of Indonesia's social protective system. Thank you, Coco.
Thank you so much, Ibu Nurma. And if I could invite Ms. Arpine to respond to the following question. What are the key challenges and opportunities in using digital tools to enhance the inclusiveness of social protection coverage for people with disabilities and other vulnerable groups? Thank you, Ms. Arpine.
Thank you very much, Coco, for the question. The key challenges in using digital tools for inclusive social protection in Armenia include digital divide. Many vulnerable people, especially in rural areas, have limited access to the technology. This is compounded by low digital literacy levels, which restrict the ability to fully benefit from digital services. Ensuring digital platforms meet accessibility standards such as the WCAG 2.1 AA for persons with disabilities remains a critical need. And we have already implemented in our e-disability platform, and this process is continuous with our other platforms, which provide social services to our beneficiaries. And privacy and data protection are also vital concerns due to the sensitivity of personal and beneficiary information handled by these systems. And to meet these challenges, Armenia implements an integrated information security and quality management system aligned with an international ISO 27001 and ISO 9001 standards. This supports robust data protection, system reliability, and continuous quality assurance within the social protection digital infrastructure. On the opportunity side, advanced technologies present promising solutions. Biometric verification can enhance secure identity management, while AI-powered analytics enable proactive outreach to vulnerable groups, tailoring interventions more effectively. User-friendly design focused on accessibility helps expand coverage and make social protection platforms easier to use. These digital tools can improve targeting, efficiency, and personalization of services, ultimately helping extend social protection coverage to those most in need and fostering inclusivity across Armenia's social protection system. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arpine, for highlighting the innovation of digital tools in Armenia to support the social protection outreach for vulnerable groups. I'd like to invite Jimmy to respond to the final question of this panel discussion on what directions and design changes are being undertaken in the Listahanan to make it more adaptive and shock responsive, not just for household targeting, but also for social protection planning. Thank you.
Thank you. The quick answer to that, Coco, is we're now stopping the static implementation of social protection targeting. We're now moving towards a more dynamic social registry. Another I would also like to emphasize is now the Philippines will now discontinue Listahanan in light of the community-based monitoring system. But what we will be developing, the ministry will be developing what we call as the DSWD Social Registry. The DSWD Social Registry now therefore will serve as will be a centralized database of all social protection programs, at least those implemented by the ministry. It will be a centralized database of the vulnerable population in the Philippines that will serve as a comprehensive reference in identifying the right social services for the right people. And we're doing it now. We're currently centralizing all the social protection databases within the ministry. It will have the capability, for example, on self-service registration and self-service updating. We have also done pilot testing that, and it was successful. The poor are actually now starting to transact online, and we were able to conduct the pilot test last year. There's also going to be an authentication service directly with the Philippine National ID. There's also a streamlined assignment of e-wallets per beneficiary. We would also like to avoid, or we no longer want to continue the practice of, each program is maintaining and assigning the e-wallets for each beneficiary, because we understand that one household may become a beneficiary of several social protection programs, and there should just be one e-wallet in order to, better deliver timely and correct amounts of social assistance. And that will also be interoperable with other social administrative databases in the government. So there will be, luckily now, because the Philippines has already established an ICT ministry that helps all other ministries to better connect and to better interoperate with other agencies insofar as access to information is concerned. So and also talking about being inclusive, we're also developing now online and offline features for the dynamic DSWD social registry, as well as multi-language support, including the blind and deaf mute, especially for the Philippines with high language diversity. We have about an average of around 150 to 180 languages, and you know we have we're designing it now to better to better reach out, to better become more inclusive to the general population that the DSWD, the ministry is serving. So those are the activities that we're currently doing to really operationalize and shift towards a more dynamic, a more inclusive social protection targeting system. That's all.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. That's really great to hear the work that's being done to develop a unified social registry that's interoperable, accessible, on demand, and really innovative. So thank you very much, Jimmy. I would like to open the floor next to questions. We have several questions in the chats already. Quite a few are have already been answered, I see. And there is one for Indonesia, for Ibu Norma, on how Indonesia is able to manage to maintain a single registry and one database of different programs to avoid duplication. That is from Mohammed Tariq. Ibu Norma, if you would like to respond to that question. And we also have a question, I believe, on SPICE. This would be for Ludo from Shireen Gul. Thank you for the insightful presentation on the assessment parameters of SPICE. I'm particularly curious about how climate vulnerability is factored into the framework, and how climate responsive variables derived from climate data currently integrated, or is there thinking on how they could be integrated into later iterations and in social protection measures at scale. So perhaps I could first invite Ludo to respond to the question on SPICE, and then invite Dr. Norma to respond to the question on for Indonesia. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Coco, and thank you, Shiringo, for the question. I've been answering, typing, and then I realized that they disappear from the screen. But now, in relation to this question on the how social protection response to climate vulnerability is factored in the framework, there was a similar question before. Every country report does look at climate, how shock responsive is social protection in the country, and consider the five main dimensions. So what is the legislation and regulatory framework in the country? What are the financing arrangements in case of shocks? And what are the existing databases that can be used for the identification of potential beneficiaries, and what is the preparedness to deploy a shock responsive program, and what are the delivery system that exist in the country. And but this is a part of the overall assessment of the social protection system, but it's not factored in a specific indicator. It remains a discussion on the overall system, and to what extent in past shocks has been responsive. The social protection has been adapted to respond to those shocks, but we have not yet developed an indicator as such to measure that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Ludo. Ibu Norma, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the question from Muhammad. Thank you. One of the key strengths of the design is its role in managing duplication, both in the data and also in programs. Yeah. First, Datazen use a single unique identifier for household and individual. Use the national ID. Yes, we say it with NIC and I key. It linked to the population administration system, the data from MOHA. Yeah. It will reduce the double counting and ensure that assistance reach the right person. And for avoid the duplication of program, Datazen integrated beneficiary information across ministries, especially with the Ministry of Social, and also with the local government. So if one household is already receiving certain assistance, this can be tracked to avoid overlap and improve targeting. In this way, Datazen not only improve efficiency, but also helps reallocate resources toward groups who are still uncovered. Thank you. I hope this
Thank you so much.
question.
Yes, thank you, Norma. Yes, that was great. Thank you very much. We still have a few more minutes for questions, if there are any more questions. Or any questions, if anybody would like to raise their hand. Maybe give anybody a few minutes to type in the questions. We have a question box where you can provide questions to our panelists and to our presenter. Alia, yes, please.
Okay,
If you have a question, please.
Yes, this is Alia Khan from Pakistan. And since Pakistan is experiencing massive flooding right now, my question is that does the SPICES framework operate within universal social protection paradigm? Because, for example, in Pakistan, we have a very dynamic social registry and a very effective cash transfer program called BISP, but it's not universalized. Social protection is not universalized. So, now that there is need to use the socioeconomic registry to extend social protection to the flood affectees, there is really no mechanism in place. So I'd like the comments of the panelists and experts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia. So the question to Ludo and the panelists is around the need to expand beneficiaries' coverage in shocks when the existing coverage is not universal. Perhaps I could invite Jimmy, if you have any experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, expansion during the COVID-19 pandemic, or to share. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, in the Philippines, we have this listahanan, and it should have served as the primary reference of identifying beneficiaries, especially during COVID. However, because of its static design and assessment was done prior to the pandemic, there were the social protection, the listahan was not really the best source to look for who are the poor and who are, for example, the low income earners that were targeted then in providing social protection services. So what the Philippines did is, okay, we utilized listahanan as the number one source, but we went beyond that. We immediately engaged our local governments in identifying who may be the other households that are not part of listahanan but are of equal of the same situation. So learning from that, moving forward now, we're no longer just looking at listahanan. In fact, we will not really focus on listahanan and we'll discontinue it. We will instead look at the entire what we call the CBMS, community-based monitoring system, done side by side the by the census of population. However, the CBMS contains social protection indicators or that can be used for social protection targeting and planning. So that is what we will manage eventually, the CBMS data for social protection.
Thank you, Jimmy. Arpine, would you have any observations to share?
You mean in a shock responsiveness process?
Yes, in terms of extending coverage.
Yes, unfortunately, when the COVID starts, we were quite a beginner in collecting data and with interoperability processes, but we managed to cover these problems by having very tight cooperations with our governmental agencies and overcome these problems by providing services to our beneficiaries very quickly. And these services were mainly connected to the financial aid to those beneficiaries who have, for example, their own businesses or have problems to cover their financial expenditures during these COVID times. And again, in this process, mainly the digital tools mainly improve this process and help us to support our beneficiaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Arpine. Ibu Nurma, would you have any thoughts to share?
Yes, thank you for the very important point from the Pakistan. Indeed, many countries, including Pakistan, face challenges in moving from a well-functioned but fragmented registry and cash transfer system towards a universalized and more adaptive social protection system. In Indonesia, this is exactly why the DTSN was established to move beyond a program specific registries and create a single dynamic social and economic registry that can serve as the backbone for multiple programs. The DTSN is continuously updated and linked with administrative data, so it helps not only in targeting but also in expanding coverage to groups that were previously left behind. While Indonesia is also still on the journey toward full universalization, DTSN provides a strong mechanism to gradually extend protection across the life cycle, improve shock responsiveness, and reduce duplication. In that sense, the experience of Indonesia highlights the importance of building integrated registries as a foundation for transformation. Maybe it will inspire the Pakistan also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Nirma. Ludo, I don't know if you have any final thoughts to share.
Well, very little to add to what already was answered by the other panelists. But just to say that, yeah, the spices is a general framework. So regardless of what is the social protection system in the countries, it looks at across these inputs, outputs, and outcomes, and then it really looks at the results of whatever is the social protection system. And clearly, you know, in there is this assessment of what is the preparedness of the social protection system to be adapted to respond to shocks. Pakistan, to my knowledge, unfortunately, in recent years has been affected by so many disasters, in particularly floods, and the system that has also been developed for the BISP program has been used and leveraged to respond to those crises in an effective way, as well as during COVID. In general, the experience that we have seen during COVID is that if a country has a wide system and information and is not narrowly targeted to a small group of people, you know, has the means to then support people that are maybe in normal years, maybe well off or relatively not in poverty, but because of a shock, they could suddenly be in a situation of need. And in those situations, you know, a quick response and the ability to identify the people affected is crucial.
Thank you so much, Ludo. I think we're coming to the end of the webinar, so we will move to the wrap-up. Thank you to our dear distinguished panelists for your excellent interventions, and also to Ludo for your wonderful presentation. And the interest is obviously, it's garnered a lot of interest, so that's great, and a testimony to also the SPICES framework and approach. I think we covered a lot in this webinar, and also it was great to hear some of the innovations in data collection that were shared by panelists. For example, namely the use, the shift towards using single unified registries that reduce duplication, inclusion, exclusion errors, the use of AI for more targeted outreach and for better policymaking, as well as on-demand registration and other forms of incorporating data collection and beneficiary registration. Also heard about the importance of interoperability was very much highlighted, but not just between different line ministries, but also civil registration databases, but also at all levels of government, at local and national levels. And also we also heard about the focus on the need for concerted efforts to collect data on groups in vulnerable situations, for example, persons with disabilities in Armenia, and the way that digital tools are being made more accessible to different groups in vulnerable situations. So I think we covered a lot of great issues, and it was a very fruitful webinar. Thank you to everybody, and also for your questions to the audience. And with this, I would like to hand over to Bob for the closing of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Coco. And just a few words before we close. So just wanted to give the audience some updates. So we have completed 8 reports based on the SPICES methodology, 8 country reports. And we're currently working on another 6 reports. So there will be quite a few reports coming out in a few months with that are based on this methodology. And an important issue, important aspect of this work that I would like to reiterate is that, as Ludo said, these are not static. This is not a static methodology. So these are frameworks that countries can use, and they can modify based on their needs. So, for example, the aspects on addressing different risks, and it could be enhanced to better reflect intersectionality of vulnerabilities and so on. And this could be done through quantitative indicators, but also through qualitative analysis, narrative analysis. So, for example, the sections on responding to climate risk could contain quantitative indicators, but they could also address institutional development. So what we are hoping to achieve is a framework that can combine quantitative and qualitative indicators, and that enable countries and different agencies and researchers within those countries to have a consolidated vision of social protection systems, and be able to go to have an in-depth assessment rather than just look at some selected indicators, such as, for example, expenditure as a share of GDP. So with that, I would like to close this webinar. Thank all of our panelists for their insightful presentations. And I would also like to thank the audience for their questions and their engagement. And I would like to thank socialprotection.org for hosting this webinar. I would encourage you to join us for our next webinar, which will be in a couple of months' time. It will be announced on socialprotection.org. We will announce the topic of the next webinar in due time. Finally, please join the Asia Pacific Social Protection online community. So you can do that by following the links on the presentation that will be sent out to you. And of course, you will need to register for socialprotection.org in the first instance, after which you will be able to join the Asia Pacific Social Protection community. And as part of that, you will have access to the first bulletin that is coming out this couple of days. And the bulletin contains a lot of exciting up-to-date information about social protection developments, including publications, blogs, posts, and podcasts. So with that, I would like to close the seminar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.